Ladies and gentlemen,
Good evening.
Are you ready?
Okay, here we go.
You're listening to the Deal Room Podcast. Join us as we bring you the inside scoop on business sales and acquisitions. Get across trends in the area and hear the industry's best recount their real-life tips, traps, and experiences. Now, here's your host, Joanna Oakey.
Hi, it's Joanna Oakey here, and welcome back to the Deal Room Podcast, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. Now, today we have on the show Zoran Sarabaca from Xcllusive Business Sales, all to talk about the key characteristics of buying distressed assets. This is a really topical subject right at the moment and really useful listening if you're in the market to buy a business of any description or even in the market specifically for distressed assets. So here we go with our discussion with Zoran. Zoran, I just want to say a huge welcome along to the Deal Room Podcast.
Well, thanks for having me again.
Zoran, it's always a pleasure having you on the show.
Did everyone else say no? So you made a phone call to me after the last podcast. All right, okay, let's talk.
Well, I mean, you know, I always get excited for our podcast to see what we might disagree on next. So let's give it a go. Where are we?
Okay, let's do it.
Where's the tension between broker and lawyer here? I like it. Okay, well, today we're talking about the purchase of distressed assets. I think it's very topical in the market that we're in at the moment to be talking about distressed assets because there's been a period of time, obviously, COVID, we've had a whole heap of issues for many businesses over COVID, but there's been a lot of stimulation from the government. And of course, that's all come out now. And we are really seeing it hit the market. And I think we're seeing the beginning perhaps of a bit of a tide. Who knows? What's your thoughts there?
I would agree with you. It's just the beginning. Liquidations running on about 40% down from historic average. Well, everybody thought when the COVID happened that it's going to open the flood of distressed assets, but it didn't happen because, as you just mentioned, of the government stimulus. But you don't have to go, far to reach. Look what's happening in Queensland with all the building companies, and now there's going to be flow-on effect, and from those larger companies, the subcontractors, the suppliers to them, going to get affected, and then may going to be even third wave when they get affected.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really interesting to see how that pans out. But if it goes back to normal levels, it's going to be 40% more distressed assets than we had before. But there's a good chance it's going to go higher than that. You wanted to talk about buying distressed assets. Look, just because something is distressed, it doesn't mean that you're going to get it for $1. And you may going to get it for $1. You may going to get it really cheap, but you also have to consider how much money is going to cost you to turn that business around once when you purchase it. What I've seen in the past, and we've been working in that space since GFC pretty much, and what I've seen, the buyers that do well out of buying distressed assets are buyers there within the industry. So because I already got the back end. I can do a lot of savings. I can clean up. I can get rid of the assets that are not performing and just keep the ones that they're performing well. And we have done over the years many deals in this space. And the ones that done really well out of that were always industry buyers.
Yeah.
That's not to say that if you're an individual purchaser, you can't go and buy the asset, but just be very careful why that business actually got into trouble in the first place. And do you have a skills? Do you really have a skills? Not that you think that you have a skills, but you have a skills and ability to identify that and turn it around. It helps to have some advisors and people that are experienced in that place. And just because something was on the market, for 3 million before, and now you can grab it for 500,000, it doesn't mean that it's not going to cost you another 2.5 million until you get it to the level that you hope it's going to be.
So, I guess we're saying the message to the market is be careful if you're not coming in as a seasoned professional or seasoned buyer within the industry itself. So, ideally know the industry and have real certainty that you understand how you can turn the business around, reverse the performance of the business. Obviously, it's being sold as a distressed asset for a reason. And obviously, we've been through unprecedented has been used a lot to describe the period we've been through. Absolutely, it's true, though. It's an unprecedented period of time. But the problem is we don't necessarily know what the next few years will hold. And so, I guess that should always be in mind of a buyer.
We never knew what next few years going to hold. You don't know. Like, you can predict the weather 3 days in advance.
It's very true, Zoran.
And for us to try to predict the economy for 2 or 3 or 5 years in advance, it's impossible. The way I always saw that, it doesn't matter what the economy does. Like, if you think this massive ball and that represents Australian economy, well, you're a little speckle on that ball, all right? So if the economy contracts by 3%, who cares? It doesn't affect you at all. So what you got to do, it's always within your business. So if you're buying distressed assets, figure out what you can do with the business. I never worry about the economy. I don't worry about recessions. I don't worry about, interruptions and everything else. These things happen all the time. That's nothing new. It had a little bit more impact, what was happening the last few years, but that's going to continue. It's when you're looking at the distressed business, just make sure that you understand that business well. You understand why they got in trouble. You understand and have enough resources, both human resources and financial resources to actually turn it around. It's not easy. You got to move fast because you got to make some very, very quick decisions, because if you prolong decisions after you purchase that asset, well, it creates way more losses than if you make. But if you make a quick decision, that's wrong. That's going to generate the losses. And opposite is true. Like, if you quickly make a decisions on the part of the business that's losing money, may going to turn into profitability instantly. So.
Yeah. So we've talked about, the number of distressed businesses coming onto the market at the moment, and our belief that will increase, that we're at the beginning of that tide. What about the buyers around at the moment? What's the level of buyers like for distressed assets?
Well, look, buyers were always looking for the businesses, and there was a lot of buyers that were thinking that they're going to get, and they was particularly looking for distressed businesses. But anybody who's looking for the business, distressed business could be good for them as well, especially if they're trade buyers. There are a few that are looking particularly for distressed businesses, but in general, buyers are buyer. All right. So especially if it's a trade buyer, distressed business or good profitable business, they could both have a value to them. So I'm not seeing any particular people that are looking for the distressed businesses, but the buyers are there, like in big numbers. We just talked about you can't predict what's going to happen in the future. I'm going to try to make a little prediction. All right. so
for it, Zoran.
Well, a couple of things. Like I think that the larger deals, mid-market, say 1 to 10 million, maybe 2 to 3 million. From 2 to 3 million to about 10, 15 and above, that's going to stay. That's a different ballgame. How these people funding businesses and how these companies funding businesses. The small businesses, very small end, say job type buying businesses, I think it's going to stay. And if the economy gets a little bit worse, we've seen that on the end of the resource boom. We've seen that at the beginning of COVID, that people look to buy the business, to buy the job, so to buy income. So where I think it's going to be a bit of an impact is this small to medium sized business. So it's not a job; it's a little bit more, $500-600 million, all right? Because most of the buyers for those businesses were individuals that were tapping into their equity in homes to fund the business. And the interest rates were to fund the purchase of the business, and interest rates were very, very low. So now, as those interest rates are rising and it's property market adjusting, it may going to be hard, and the banks are getting strict on lending. So it may going to be harder to raise those funds. And number of the buyers in that market in the next 12 to 18 months. Also, it's going to be harder or virtually impossible for individuals to, unless they got the cash, to actually purchase to fund distressed asset, because you're buying the asset that's probably not making money or could be making money, but you don't have enough records because you just purchased it to actually show that it's making money. So it's going to be much harder to fund them. On the other hand, there's going to be opportunity for businesses to grow through acquisition of purchasing distressed assets.
Yeah, well, and one of my favourite topics is growth through acquisition for businesses. So obviously distressed assets, are one of those opportunities out there. As you say, there's a lot of things to navigate the ability to take a business, turn it around. But, if you can rip out costs because there's a shared cost base between the two organisations, there's many, many ways that you can make it happen. But funding, as you say, I think is going to be a key issue moving forward.
So, one more thing to mention with buying distressed businesses is that you don't have a luxury of time.
Yeah.
So you won't have a 6 weeks due diligence. You're going to have very limited information, and you make a decision based on that information if you're going to go forward. So it's a bit of a punt, and you just otherwise it's not going. You're just not going to. Somebody else going to buy it before you actually make a decision. So if you're thinking of purchasing distressed asset, gamble with money gamble with your head, not over it. So gamble with the money that you can lose, and but the contracts when you're dealing with administrators and liquidators, their contracts are very, very simple. Pretty much says, we didn't tell you anything. You're buying. You can tell me more about it. It is as is. And we're not making any warranties and guarantees. Buyer beware. Yeah. So you got to be prepared to actually carry that risk or accept that risk. But I have seen people do very well in that industry and improve their business through buying those assets. But they were prepared to take a pretty big punt.
Brilliant. Okay, wonderful, Zoran. Well, look, it's been a rapid fire podcast today, but really great information for you in relation to distressed assets. I know there's a lot of interest out there in the market at the moment. Obviously, large volume now and the beginning of volume coming into the market at the moment. So huge thank you to you for coming and sharing your insights. I feel a bit robbed. I feel like we had no opportunity to take opposing points on the contract.
That's because you double booked yourself, all right? So we ran out of time.
We'll have to have you back so that we can, perhaps cover something more controversial so we can have opposing positions. But look, really good to have you on the show. Always good to have you on the show, Zoran. You certainly tell it the way it is. Well, the way you think it is. No, the way it is.
Oh, here we go.
But how do our listeners contact you if they want to get in contact with you, Zoran, either to look at selling their business or indeed if they're interested maybe in purchasing a distressed asset or any of the other businesses you have available?
If somebody is interested in going on our database, we'll gladly add them, and anything distressed or not distressed, they're going to get notified as it comes on the market. We got offices in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Canberra, Adelaide, and everywhere except Perth. So if there's any broker listening who wants to join a really good organization, give us a call. We need to build a team there.
Clever, Zoran, clever.
But if you're thinking of, you need help with selling or buying businesses, Xclusive Business Sales, which is spelled xcllusive.com.au, and just drop us a line or pick up a phone, give us a call, and we'll talk to you.
Brilliant. And we'll, of course, link through to that in our show notes. Zoran, huge thank you for coming on to the Deal Room podcast today.
You're welcome.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Deal Room podcast. If you would like more information about this topic, then head over to our website at www.thedealroompodcast.com, where you'll be able to download a transcript of this podcast episode if you're the kind of person who likes to read. this sort of stuff in fine detail. And of course, you will find details there of how to contact Zoran and his team of brokers at Xcllusive Business Sales. You will also be able to find details of how to contact our lawyers at Aspect Legal if you or your clients would like to discuss any legal aspects of sales or acquisitions. Of course, in a market like we are in right at the moment, as Zoran said quite a few times, it's really important if you're going to be a buyer of distressed businesses to be ready to take action quickly. Now, we've got a number of great products for buyers to help get you deal ready as quickly as possible from a legal perspective, starting with our ready to acquire product. Now, in our show notes, we'll link through to our ready to acquire product. We also have a whole heap of on-demand webinars that might be relevant to you if you're looking at buying or indeed getting ready to exit your business. And we will link through to top tips on getting ready to sell a business from a legal perspective and top tips on getting ready to acquire a business from a legal perspective here in the show notes. Now, if you just want to talk to one of our legal eagles at Aspect Legal, then just head over to the show notes or to our website at www.aspectlegal.com.au, and there we have a free 15-minute call available to you where you can speak to one of our legal eagles about what you need to do to get prepared either for an acquisition or a sale. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed what you heard today. You have been listening to Joanna Oakey and the Deal Room Podcast, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. See you next time. Are you gearing up for an acquisition? If so, then check out our Ready to Acquire product, a product that will set you up for acquisition success. Ready to Acquire includes an acquisition readiness diagnostic, a one-on-one 30-minute legal steps consultation, a legal steps blueprint document to help you get crystal clear on the steps and the time frames you need to be across when acquiring a business, a one-on-one 30-minute target consultation when you've found a target so that you can feel completely confident about the next steps, a template term sheet, a template NDA, a legal due diligence 21-point checklist, a deal team support line, and $450 legal credit. And if you're interested, just send us an email at readytoacquire@aspectlegal.com.au.
Ladies and gentlemen.
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Thanks for listening to the Deal Room Podcast. To find out more about this episode and other episodes in the series, check out the show notes or head over to our website at thedealroompodcast.com.au.